our stakeholders' interest throughout all her delivery. Angela, it's so wonderful to have you, and I'll hand over the stage to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, William. Such a great introduction. Thank you. So I am mindful of the time, so I will start my presentation. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so stakeholder engagement. Before I do that, I'll just go into a little bit about my journey into product. So I started my career in tech, but first it was a general background of business with PR and communications. And then I went into project management. So I worked for a couple of multinationals, IBM, MasterCard. So I kind of understood how payments worked, and I quite liked that. And then due to a number of reasons, I went into managed services in the UK, where I was working on system integrations. And fast forward to now, I'm doing product strategy for startups, gaming companies, and blockchain companies. So yeah, that's my brief journey. So today's topic is stakeholder engagement, one of the most important areas of product management, I would say. And I'm going to go through some of the points here to try to give you an overview, and then I'll obviously leave some time for Q&A. So we'll go into what makes engagement successful, a few insights that I've seen throughout my career, strategies that have worked, and some that haven't, and also what kind of actions can you put into place when you're, joining a company, trying to figure out who the stakeholders are, keeping them engaged. So I've included a quote from Simon Sinek. He's very obviously well known in terms of his research. He does a lot of speeches about psychology, and one thing that I wanted to include in here was how important it is to understand the nuances of stakeholder engagement. So when people are financially invested, they obviously want to have a return on that investment. But when people are emotionally invested, they want to try to contribute, and they want to try to make sure that the product is successful. So it's important now, looking at this kind of viewpoint of seeing, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that people are emotionally invested, and how do I make sure that they're engaged and can contribute to the vision of the product. So it is a bit wishy-washy, and I've included a GIF here from a famous Ricky Gervais from The Office, because when you talk to engineers, they may be thinking about technical problems, they may be looking at more tangible things. As a product manager, you may have to look at things that are affecting the success of the product. And it could be that, certain characters in the company have different views. And then it's also about how do you navigate those situations, and how do you make sure that people's viewpoints are kept into the discussions. You also have introverts, you also have extroverts. How do you engage with those people? So it's important to have some kind of emotional intelligence when it comes to dealing with people. And at the end of the day, you're building relationships with people who eventually will have some kind of interest in the outcome of your project, and that's the definition of a stakeholder. So I hope you like the GIF. So let's jump into internal stakeholders. So my background has been more leaning towards B2B software solutions. So I have a lot more experience on the B2B side, but as well as recently B2C. So if you're looking at, for example, my experience at a company called Communisys, where I basically was helping Procter & Gamble with implementing a marketing solution system, we were looking at how do we make sure that the internal users are using that system. So they were actually our customers. So we also, obviously, as a product manager, you're working very closely with all the internal teams. I've listed them here. Legal, I've put it as the last one. It should probably be the first. The amount of times product goes into all these discussions with all amazing things that we can do with UX, amazing things we can do with marketing. In my experience, I've found that legal just say stop, and that can actually have wasted a lot of your time. So then how do you navigate, making sure these people are brought in at the right time of the project and they understand what it is you're trying to do, and you can have some discussions early on so you avoid wasting time. Going to external, working in gaming, I've seen a lot of different areas of dealing with where you can see the end users actually engaging with your product, and that gives you a lot of insights. So you want to be able to know who your customers are. That's a whole nother topic. Who your partners are. For example, are you using a third-party vendor for payments? What are the implications on your security team? There's also a number of areas that you can delve into: social media, as well as Discord channels, Telegram channels, where users are generally there talking about your new launch or what you've just changes that you've made to your product. One of the most important things is competitors. As a product manager, you're always looking at how your competitors are faring in the market, and all of this can help you understand a bit more about how you're going to interact with those conversations with your internal teams to get things done. So I've jotted down here a rough idea of what the strategy would look like if you're looking at joining a company and you're innovating fast and you're keen to deliver. The first thing is to identify what it is you're trying to do and share that product vision across the teams that I mentioned. So someone in marketing or someone in a different department might say, well, it's great you're designing this specific thing for one of our products. We have 20,000 products. How does that affect my role? And how do I, what is my interest in that situation? So you have to try and make that relevant for that specific department, which is a task in itself. But by being very clear about what it is you're trying to do and how it also aligns with the company's objectives. So if you can try to link those two, that would help and communicate that very clearly. I've also written discuss priorities. So priorities are constantly changing. We need to share, what's the latest updates, what insights are we seeing from the user feedback, how did we get to those priorities as well. It may be that might seem oversharing, but if someone has a different priority and they say, this is what I would like to see, and then you can say, okay, we're doing this for these reasons because we've looked at all of this, we've taken all of the inputs, and we are now looking at how do we get the first set of priorities. And I will go into prioritization, which is again a whole nother topic. But it's important because you'll be having different views when you're engaging with stakeholders. So knowing that those priorities are clear from the beginning is very important. Key objectives, so OKRs, objectives and key results. How does your product align with what that specific team may be working towards? So if you can try to again see what it is you're trying to do in terms of whether that's feature changes or improving a specific area of an existing product or even a data migration project, is that going to increase the speed at which they can query their data? And is that something that they can then use that data to make decisions faster? So trying to link these things is quite useful so that you can get some buy-in from the stakeholders. Again, I've put transparent communication, which is quite obvious. You want to make sure the right people are involved, and we'll go into the cultural differences of some companies have a transparent way of communicating to all the teams, and I would say that that's one of the things we're seeing today in startups that are overtaking a lot of less transparent companies, because they have the information, their teams are aligned, and then things move fast. And another thing about transparent communication I wanted to stress is the importance of data. So as a product manager, you're really relying on data, getting that analysis done. Okay, where are we in terms of user engagement with our product, whether that's new signups, if it's a B2C, or are we having issues with system integration? So we want to involve the right people in that discussion. So data always helps, as I'm sure most of you are aware. And then leadership. Leadership, they need to understand that what it is you're doing, you have to continuously report back to them and make sure that they can also actively support your team and what it is you're trying to do by, again, having open communication on what the priorities are for the company. I've seen some companies that, they will say these are their priorities. They'll go to the market, and maybe the CEO has an interview and say, this is the grand vision we want to do. But then when you look at certain things that are happening, it may not be aligned. So we need to know that, is it aligned to what it is the overarching company wants to do, and communicate that effectively. So lastly is feedback and adapting to situations. So regular feedback with users, with the internal and external stakeholders. And this is always an ongoing process. So I will go to the next page. Conflict. I'm sure a lot of people want to know, how do you build relationships with characters that may be harder to get along with? It's a tough subject. I mentioned briefly about company culture. So is the company culture a collaborative culture? Do they encourage people to work together, or is it more a competitive environment? And you want to understand, what the nuances are of the company early on. And it could be by asking questions about how the progress of the team has gone so far. How do they deal with failures? Have they celebrated any wins? To understand, like, what exactly is the company culture? Are they transparent? And also, there are some companies that they'll say certain things, but when you join, you find that they are working very differently. But obviously, you want to understand that and then adapt yourself to that culture. Customer centricity is a huge one. I mean, Amazon are the leaders in that from early, and a lot of companies followed that model, putting the customer first and always just obsessing about the customer. And that helps drive a decision to whether we're going to go live with something or whether we're not. So understanding, are they adapting to that, or is it more a financially driven company where they're only thinking about the return on investment, which will change a lot of the way in which you get things across the line. So invest in the good times. This is not about team meetings. This is about having one-to-ones with people when, like, before the potential fire might start, let's say. So being proactive about engagements to avoid when it's crunch time, you may need that person. And that will also help you mitigate risks whenever you're able to quickly call somebody. If you've got a good relationship with someone, they're going to pick up the phone. They're going to want to help you during those tough times. So it's trying to set up those meetings, get to know those people, and I'll go into a bit of calendar management, which can get a bit crazy because it's a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders to constantly be in touch with, but it's important as a product manager. Listen carefully, which is a very clear request as a product manager. And I will add a tale of what happened with a coworker of mine. I happened to be just having a conversation with him. I think I had a weekly meeting, and it was during a large system in migration, a data migration project. And he was the administrator of the legacy system. What happened was, while we were talking, did someone ask something? Oh, yeah. While we were talking, he unveiled that the delays in the project would actually affect the maintenance of the legacy system. So what happened was, I asked him straight there. I said, "What is the storage capacity of the legacy system?" Because month by month, data is being accumulated. It's going into the system, and tell me how long have we got basically before we run into trouble. And he was like, we're pretty much there, Angela. It's 99%. And it was an on-prem solution, which meant we needed to order hardware, we needed to get someone down there, and it was a very big 6 months, 7 months project. So just by one little conversation, I was able to understand that that was a risk to the entire project, and we had to allocate resources to that. I escalated that to the leadership team, and they were able to monitor the data. We ended up deleting a few things or putting it onto a separate area. But that just shows you that a lot comes out of just a throwaway comment. When it comes to engaging with stakeholders, you want to manage how frequent you're catching up with your fellow co-workers, or how often you're looking at the external market. So set some milestones in your plan, and determine how often you want to do that. I would say it depends on the specific projects and how fast your company is moving, but it is something to consider. So I mentioned a bit about prioritization. There are a couple of things that you need to know. That, for example, do you have enough time allocated to release notes? You want to make sure that those are sent out before you're going live with specific features and communicating that. Meetings, I think I mentioned. Introverts may not want to be vocal in large meetings, so you need to adapt your style of communication. Also, trying to get feedback from people is an important thing. They may even have input onto how they believe things can be better on your product. Yeah, they may even want to. You may even want to get them involved in testing, just to get them a bit more involved in your delivery. And yeah, you never know, they may have some positive input. I put here disagree and commit, because feedback is a tricky one. You may get things, you may stretch out the time that you have, and Amazon have, I think it's 11 principles, and one of which is disagree and commit, which basically is what it says. You don't want to go down a road for too long. If you're not on the same page, there's a way in which you can communicate that and commit to doing exactly what is the most important thing for the customer. There are a lot of tools out there in terms of having a stakeholder engagement plan. You don't need to use Excel anymore. There's a lot of tools out there. I've used Jira to get people to tag people and get them to view certain documents. Confluence is very good at that. And also having a table in Confluence where you have an @ for each person, and saying, like, if you can add your input to certain documents. You need to also block some time to do write-ups on what's been happening and to share that with the team as well. So there's various ways of communicating. Speaking of which, there's also a lot of miscommunication, let's say, and you want to avoid being vague. And that is a tricky one, because we obviously work in an environment where everybody is from different cultures. Some people may not understand what you're saying, so you want to avoid jargon, and you want to use language that people understand, whether that's marketing or legal as well. You don't want to be too technical. So I've mentioned about inviting stakeholders to give their input and resolving conflict with speed and empathy. I think it's important to show empathy, and obviously you want to seek a common ground with your stakeholders. So there's other best practices. I think most people have seen this document. It was, I think, originally in Pinbox way back in the day. I think it's a bit outdated, but you definitely need a stakeholder registry that will list all the people who are key stakeholders in the delivery of your project. And you want to map it out as well. And this is the matrix that shows if you have high power, you want to have a look at all the specific quadrants. So low interest, high power, you want to keep them satisfied. High interest and high power, they're key players. Low power, low interest, you want to, I feel bad saying low priority, but yeah, it is what it is. And high interest and low power, you want to keep them informed throughout your process. But you're continuously keeping all this documentation up to date as people leave companies, new people start, and you want to keep that updated with all the relevant information. There is a more recent take on this, and it's by someone called Dan Olson. He's written Product Market Fit and a number of amazing books. He talks about user satisfaction with current alternatives and the importance of user needs. So just taking what I just said before, but putting more of a customer-centric approach. So if you're in a room with 20 or 15 different stakeholders and everybody has an opinion, you may want to look at plotting the specific things on this graph. So that will give you an idea, is it something that it's worth pursuing because there is a competitive market, so it's high on the user satisfaction axis, and then it's also important for user needs. The competitive market is one of the areas that you want to say, okay, we want to 10x and be better than our competitors' products. So that is definitely something we want to pursue. You may find it's an opportunity because it's low on the user satisfaction. So current alternatives to that specific product has a low satisfaction, but there is a high importance for the user to have that feature. And the lower one is obviously not worth going after if it's not important for the user and there's low satisfaction with current alternatives. So this is where you will see companies that have disrupted markets. They tend to have just one or two really good features, and they've homed in on that, and they've disrupted that entire industry. I can give you some examples later. So wrapping up, because it is, I do want to leave time for Q&A. Painful lessons. So as a product manager, I've seen a number of issues. I won't go into too much detail, but one One that sticks out is we made a change. It was a payment change to how customers could come onto our website, and we removed currency. It was there were a number of reasons why we decided to remove that feature. And what happened was when I went the next day and checked the media and saw some blogs, and people were saying, why did they remove this? And also, does this mean they're going to remove other things and maybe we shouldn't stay on this platform anymore? So that was a mismanaged communication with our external stakeholders and a painful lesson. And from thereafter, we put in some specific things in place to keep users aware of upcoming things and to communicate it better on our website. I can list a whole number of things, but that was a trade-off because it was also bias for action. There was no one using the specific, well, there were a few people still keen on using it, perhaps, but you also have to know that there are decisions that get made when you're iterating fast. And at the same time, you have to learn fast. So thank you, everyone, for your time, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you so much, Angela, for sharing on the effective strategies, best practices, challenges, and you've covered all the key areas that we'll go through in dealing with stakeholders. What about in remote teams? What are some of the strategies you would encourage for product managers when you've got remote teams?
Yes, so I mean, everything I mentioned can be applied to remote teams. I think having your calendar, for example, on open to others to book. That was a culture we had in one of the companies that I worked for. And I would say, yeah, we're all virtual now, so having meetings virtually is the only difference. You also want to try to do some team events where you can have some downtime with teams, because we're not in the office. That's the main thing, is that you can't just come up to somebody's desk, or you can't meet them when they're going for water. But you can say, like, why don't we have a virtual lunch next week, and book some time. We also had a culture where once in a while we could ask budget for Deliveroo as well. I mean, that's extravagant, right? But you can try to get your team to have a lunch where it's paid for by the company. Users, yeah, everything is digital now, so there is nothing that is different from besides those things that I can say. Hope that answered the question.
Thanks so much for answering that. I know a question that would always be on people's mind, which is also shared in interviews. You've talked about how to deal with difficult stakeholders and stakeholders that continue to just not engage and support with the agenda. How far can you go? Are key questions, yeah, that people would always like to know.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. When people are not engaged, I think it's okay to ask. I think one of the things I mentioned is have an awareness that some people have different styles of communication. So they may find that audio is not their best way. They want to read a document. So it's trying to find that out in a different way, and by asking them, how did you find that meeting? They may give you some insights. Okay, it was boring. Do you want us next time to involve you in just the documentation? And is it okay if you add your input to this Google Doc, for example? And it could be that that's what they prefer. So, but however, if they are very highly important, like on the quadrant of high, I would say that you want to just discuss with them what is the reason why they're not participating. And when there is discussions, is to allow them to have space and give their input. some people, yeah, they're not going to engage. So it's a bit tricky to say, you know, after that, it's just to be transparent and ask them.
Thank you so much, Angela. We've got 2 questions in the chat, but as we agreed earlier, it's a 30-minute session, and I would send out the questions to you. One was sent by Joseph, one was sent by Frank, and then you would send us an answer, which we will communicate to everyone that has attended. And we're sticking to the time. It's now 2 minutes past the time. We want to thank you for such a wonderful session on stakeholder management, which is an important power topic. It's not a soft skill. It's an important power topic that needs to be discussed and constantly dealt with. Yes. So thank you. Is it okay if I share a slide for a minute, Angela?
Yeah, sure. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. So, folks, we want to thank Angela again for joining us for our 30-minute session. And this is going to be sessions that we will continue running every Thursday, 30-minute product management session to build our product knowledge. Next week, you've got myself, and I've got a topic that I would like to share on stakeholder prioritization and key skills that we can apply. Thank you, everyone who's joined. Lastly, we've got our cohort product management certification, which is ongoing. Early bird price is 10%. Join April date, and it starts next week. And we look forward to having you all. Now, I'll stop sharing and say, for everyone who's attended today, thank you. Let's have a wonderful day. To Angela, thank you. And wishing you the very best. I know it's 9 p.m. Have a wonderful, let's say, have a wonderful good night's sleep, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye. Bye.
Bye.